Greetings to all of you, wherever you're listening from. I am Commander Bimal Raj, a TEDx speaker, internationally certified trainer and coach, mindset mentor, and a teen and parents coach. In this podcast, The Awkward Talks, I bring you topics that are usually considered taboo or are not discussed freely, but are some of the most pivotal things that we should be talking about.
October 2024, police arrest 28-year-old woman for killing her live-in partner in Delhi. November 24, a 25-year-old man butchered his live-in partner and chopped her body into 50 pieces in Ranchi. Jan 2025, one MP man killed his live-in partner and stuffed her body in the fridge for 6 months. February 2024, a 35-year-old lady hired a contract killer and killed her live-in partner in Punjab. Well, I can go on for a long time listing cases where live-in relationships ended in a disaster. Naturally, I realized that there could be a biased opinion towards this arrangement in the minds of a lot of us. See, I have a daughter who is turning 16 next month. As a parent, I need to be aware of how relationship dynamics have changed from the time I was her age. If I don't understand it fully, I will not be able to relate to her choices and decisions if she chooses to go in for a live-in relationship. Not only that, I will also not even be able to give her my suggestions or my understanding of it. Therefore, this podcast is not just for young people. It is equally important for those who have kids who are young and might consider a live-in relationship. My generation mostly understands only two types of marriages: arranged marriage and love marriage. Most of us feel that anything other than these two are not real, and therefore we tend to look upon live-in relationships with fear and we scorn at it. In our country, marriage is celebrated as the ultimate symbol of love and commitment. It's also woven into the fabric of religion, tradition, and family. It's a union blessed by elders, supported by rituals, and most importantly, considered the only socially acceptable way for two people to live together as a couple. Yet, as India is modernizing and embracing new ideas, a quiet revolution has been brewing. More and more couples are choosing to live together without the formal ties of marriage. And with that comes a wave of questions, controversies, and contradictions. So today, we are going to discuss this concept, live-in relationships. What are they? Why are they becoming more common? And perhaps more importantly, what do they mean for a country like India, where tradition still holds so much of importance? Well, this isn't a debate about whether live-in relationships are right or wrong. I'm not here to convince you to support or oppose them. Instead, this is a space to have an open, nuanced conversation about a topic that's often dismissed or misrepresented. So this conversation isn't about telling anyone what's right or wrong. It's about asking the right questions and allowing you to reflect on the answers. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is a live-in relationship? In very simple terms, it's when two people choose to live together as a couple without being legally married. Think of it as a partnership, a way of building a life together without the formalities of wedding vows or a marriage certificate. But while this concept might seem straightforward, it's anything but simple in a society like ours, where relationships are often seen as family affairs rather than personal choices. To understand the concept of live-in relationships in India, we need to take a step back and explore how such relationships have existed across the world throughout history. Surprisingly, living together without marriage isn't a modern invention. In many ancient cultures, partnerships outside of formal marriage were not only accepted but also integral to their way of life. For instance, among many indigenous tribes in Africa, South America, Asia, and even in ancient Rome and Greece, relationships were based on mutual agreement rather than the institution of marriage. Marriage, as we know today, wasn't a requirement for cohabitation. Fast forward to the 20th century, we see a massive shift in the West during the 1960s and 70s. The cultural revolutions of the era, led by movements of civil rights, gender equality, and personal freedom, they all began to challenge traditional norms around marriage. Live-in relationships emerged as a symbol of rebellion against societal expectations. In ancient Indian society, relationships were not always confined to the institution of marriage. Vedic texts and epics like the Mahabharata and ancient folklore all mention relationships that existed outside of marriage. For instance, the concept of Gandharva Vivaha, a marriage based purely on mutual consent without any formal rituals, was recognized in ancient times. Then there is the story of Lord Krishna and Radha, which is celebrated as a divine love story despite their relationship not being formalized as a marriage. But things changed drastically with the arrival of British in India. They brought in the Victorian morals, which were rigid, conservative, and centered on controlling personal behavior. Love outside of marriage was labeled as immoral and even criminal in some cases. This mindset took deep root in Indian society and continued to shape our attitudes. After independence, we adopted a legal system heavily influenced by these colonial ideals. The traditional joint family structure also added pressure to conform to societal norms where relationships outside of marriage were viewed as threat to the family honor. With that historical context in mind, let's talk about how relationships are viewed under Indian law. Yes, live-in relationships are legal in India, though they are not considered the same as marriage. The Supreme Court of India has recognized live-in relationships and provided some legal protections for partners. Even in 1978, the Supreme Court recognized a 50-year-old live-in relationship as a valid marriage. One of the most significant milestones came from the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. While this law primarily aims to protect women from abuse, it also recognizes relationships in the nature of marriage. This phrase has been interpreted to extend certain protections to women in live-in relationships, like the right to seek maintenance or protection from domestic violence. Despite these legal recognitions, live-in relationships lack the comprehensive framework that marriage provides. For example, the inheritance rights are a significant gray area. Children born to live-in couples are legally entitled to inherit their parents' property, but the process is often more complicated than in traditional marriages. Now, if you want to know how complicated, make sure that you listen to my podcast titled Make Your Will If You Love Your Family. That episode explains the complexities of a legal family getting access to their inheritance. Then you will be able to understand how much more complex this could be for a live-in relationship. Then there is a question of formal contracts. While some live-in couples draft agreements outlining their responsibilities, these aren't legally binding in the same way as a marriage certificate. This lack of structure can lead to disputes that are difficult to resolve in court. Lastly, let's not forget the societal and familial pressure that makes even accessing legal justice a challenge. Many couples in live-in relationships are afraid to come forward or seek justice because of the stigma attached. Recently, Uniform Civil Code was implemented by Uttarakhand government, becoming the first Indian state to do so. Interestingly, UCC was implemented in Goa by the Portuguese in 1867 itself. Surprising, isn't it? Now, UCC have provisions specific to living relationships as well. According to this, couples aged 21 or above must register their live-in relationships. Couples under 21 require parental consent for registration. And registration is obligatory within 1 month of entering the relationship. And failure to register within the stipulated time or even providing false information can result in fines or even imprisonment. One good aspect of UCC is that it recognizes children born to partners in live-in relationships as legitimate. This ensures that they have equal rights to inheritance and other legal benefits. Now let us look at the different dynamics of a live-in relationship. Is it just about choosing love over tradition, or is it more complex than that? Let's first look at the brighter side. One of the biggest benefits of a live-in relationship is the freedom and flexibility it offers. Unlike marriage, which becomes legal, religious, and has societal obligations, live-in relationships allow couples to define their own rules. If you choose to, you can create a partnership that works for you. Another advantage is the opportunity to test compatibility before marriage. Think of it like a trial run, a way to understand each other's habits, values, and expectations in a real-world setting. You get to see how you function as a team without being locked into a lifelong commitment. There's also economic independence and shared responsibilities. In a live-in relationship, partners often contribute equally, whether it's about paying rent, managing household chores, or planning the future together. And it can be empowering, especially for women who want to establish financial independence. It's a chance to build a partnership based on mutual respect and equality. Now, of course, these benefits don't mean that live-in relationships are perfect. They simply highlight why so many people, especially in urban India, are gravitating towards this choice. Now let's flip the coin and talk about the challenges of live-in relationships. While the freedom and flexibility they offer can be liberating, they also come with their own set of problems. The first and foremost is the social stigma and lack of family support. In India, relationships are often seen as family affairs rather than personal choices. Therefore, living together outside of marriage is still considered taboo in many circles. Couples in live-in relationships often face judgment, gossip, and even outright rejection from their families and communities. Then there's the issue of emotional and financial instability if the relationship fails. Unlike marriage, which has a legal contract, live-in relationships don't offer the same level of security. Anyone can choose to walk out any time. In such cases, there is no proper legal framework to divide assets, resolve disputes, or provide support. For women, in particular, this can be a significant risk if they sacrifice their career opportunities or other resources for the relationship. Another challenge is the absence of legal safeguard where UCC is not implemented. Any relationship can turn abusive anytime. While the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act provides some protections, it is not as comprehensive as the rights afforded to married couples. As mentioned earlier, issues like maintenance, inheritance, or child custody can become extremely complicated. There are also conflicts over differing long-term expectations. One partner might view the relationship as a precursor to marriage, while the other might see it as a standalone arrangement. When these are mismatched, it can lead to tension, misunderstanding, and in some cases, the breakdown of the relationship. This is especially true if the individual expectations are not explicitly expressed and understood by both parties right at the start. Therefore, while live-in relationships do offer a level of freedom and modernity, they also demand a lot, like emotional resilience, financial independence, and the ability to navigate social judgment. Well, what does the statistics show about living relationships in India? When we look at the stats, the first thing that comes to mind is the stark contrast between tradition and modernity. Let's look at some numbers to understand this. A survey conducted in metros like Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore revealed that nearly 60% of young adults are open to the idea of live-in relationships. In smaller cities and towns, that number drops significantly to less than 30%. And in rural areas, it's almost negligible. And obviously, this could be due to the role of exposure, education, and access to alternative lifestyles that is available in urban areas. Now, generational differences is another critical factor. Among millennials and Gen Z, live-in relationships are seen as a practical way to test compatibility and independence. For these groups, the idea of living together before marriage isn't about rebellion. It's about making informed decisions. But for older generations with stricter societal norms, live-in relationships always evoke discomfort or disapproval. Another powerful force is the media and pop culture. Bollywood, for instance, has played a significant role in normalizing live-in relationships. Movies today portray couples living together, exploring love, and dealing with societal judgment. Television shows, web series, and social media influencers also contribute to the same. Platforms like Instagram and YouTube are filled with creators who share their experiences, advocate for personal freedom, and challenge traditional norms. These influences resonate particularly with younger audience, and it makes living relationship more accessible and relatable. Now, statistics and trends are important, but they don't capture the human side of live-in relationships. Many individuals in living relationships describe the happiness of breaking free from societal norms. For some, this freedom is liberating because it allows them to focus on their careers, passions, and personal growth while building strong emotional connection with their partner. However, they also talk about the challenges of balancing love and societal pressure. Questions like, why aren't you married yet? What will people think from family, relatives, and even some friends can create tension, both within the relationship and outside of it. Now, how do generational and regional differences shape perceptions when it comes to live-in relationships in India? Let's start with parents. For many in the older generation, marriage isn't just a personal milestone, it's a social obligation. Parents often view their children's relationship as a reflection of the family's reputation. A live-in relationship in this context can feel like a threat to that reputation. However, In urban and educated families, some parents are beginning to accept or at least tolerate live-in relationships. They see it as a practical arrangement, especially in cities where young professionals live away from home. These parents might not celebrate the choice, but they kind of understand it. On the flip side, in conservative family, especially in rural areas, live-in relationships are often seen as immoral or even shameful. Here, the idea of two people living together without marriage challenges the deeply ingrained values of honor, duty, and family, and it often leads to tragic outcomes. Finally, what does the future of live-in relationships look like in India? Will they become more accepted as society continues to evolve? Or will they remain a choice limited to a small urban community? Can live-in relationships coexist with the institution of marriage? Can we create a society where both choices are equally respected? Let's remember that the heart of this issue is not about relationships. It's about freedom, respect, and the courage to make choices that align with our values. Personally, I believe that live-in relationships, like any other choice, deserve respect. They're not for everyone, and that's okay. What matters is that we create a society where people can make these choices freely, without fear, without judgment, and without having to justify their decisions to anyone. I hope you are willing to think critically and not judgmentally. Whether you agree with living relationships or not, the goal is to understand them. Many times as a parent, you might have to choose between the happiness and personal choice of your kids and your personal beliefs, your family honor, and what you consider best for your children. So here is my challenge to you. The next time you find yourself in a conversation about living relationships, pause for a moment. Instead of jumping to conclusions, ask questions, listen, and try and understand where the other person is coming from. Because at the end of the day, we need to understand and accept that even our children are adults. They may still be our little kids in our minds, but they do have the right to explore their own personal choices. Please don't try to be responsible for them. As parents, we need to be responsible to them. I hope you liked this episode, and if you really liked the episode, please don't forget to rate us. And do share with other people if you find that this could be useful for them. This is Commander Bimal Raj, and I will be back with another episode very soon.